Yes.
Frankly, that's a question I like to get, because I think there's a real misunderstanding. I often get asked, why did the U.S. government rescue Bear Stearns, rescue AIG, and not rescue Lehman Brothers? And this is something that I will try to explain it simply, but and probably just a small number of you will understand that it's very technical. And this is something that despite the fact that Ben Bernanke, Tim Gutschner, and I have all said we made a huge effort to save Lehman, and we couldn't find legal authorities that would have worked to save Lehman, people are still skeptical because they look at Bear Stearns and they look at AIG. So let me explain. We had really inadequate a regulatory system and regulatory authorities, and we did not have emergency authorities for non-banks. Bear Stearns was a non-bank. We learned a lot when Bear Stearns failed, because despite a Fed loan, Bear Stearns wasn't going to make it beyond the first weekend if we didn't, because there was a liquidity problem and a capital problem, and we needed to plug the capital hole. And fortunately, there was a buyer. There was J.P. Morgan, to fill the capital hole and guarantee the trading book during the pendency of the shareholder vote. And without that guarantee, when an investment bank starts to disintegrate, there's not much you can do. The Fed could have made a loan, but to make a loan in a bank run wouldn't have been successful. With Lehman Brothers, there was a much bigger capital hole and a liquidity problem. And we tried to, because there was no authority before we had the TARP to guarantee liabilities or to put in capital. Treasury certainly didn't have the authorities, and neither did the Fed. But we tried to replicate the Bear Stearns transaction, and we thought we had two interested buyers, Barclays and B of A. At the end of the day, B of A bought Merrill, and it's fortunate they did, because if they hadn't bought Merrill, Merrill would have failed, and it would have been bigger, and it would have been worse. And the British regulators wouldn't let Barclays make the investment, and so so Lehman went down. And some people said, well, the Fed could have made a loan. Sure, they made a loan to help them when they wind down in bankruptcy, but the loan wouldn't have saved them. It was, and now with AIG, it was a totally different situation. Again, a non-bank, and at AIG, a big liquidity problem at the holding company, and it was perceived at the time to just be a liquidity problem. And it was perceived that these insurance companies were well capitalized and they had independent ratings. And so the Fed was able to make a loan secured by the insurance companies to meet the liquidity problem. And the market accepted it because that was the market's perception. And a number of weeks later, when it became clear that there was a capital problem at AIG, they would have collapsed. But by then we had the TARP that we could put capital in. So again, I don't know how many of you understand that. Most people just look at it and say, by God, it was the U.S. government, and they should have been able to do something, and they did it in a couple cases and not in another. But we were making a huge effort in all of them to try to prevent a failure.
So thanks.